Welcome back to Chapter 20, Part 2. We're going to get into community ecology. So that's species interacting. And we're going to look at how those different species work together. Or don't. So we're going to look at interspecific interactions. So inter between specific species. So as you can see here, it's those different interactions that occur between species. So these can either be classified as positive or negative for each species. So the minus sign means it's negative, positive sign means it's beneficial. So you can have these negative interactions where both species are hurt by the interaction, so like competing for resources. Or you can have positive interactions where both species benefit each other. Or you can have positive-negative where one species benefits and the other is harmed, so like predation. So we're going to look at those different interactions. First, we should talk about competition. So in competition, both species are harmed. That's because their niches overlap. So an ecological niche is the abiotic and biotic resources that it uses. So where does it get water? Where does it get its nutrients? Where does it build its house? What does it build its house out of? So for example, if you have birds that use the same part of the tree to house themselves or feed, they're going to compete. What you'll see is the specialization, where certain birds are specialized to one area. That way, their niches don't overlap too much. If the niches are exactly the exact same spot, one is going to be better than the other, and they'll either outdo the other to the point where the other goes extinct, or the other finds a new niche and becomes successful and specializes there. So specialization in one area helps them decrease competition and increase their survivability and allows multiple species to use the same tree, for example. The competitive exclusion principle is the principle that states if the two niches are too similar, if they overlap too much, those two species can't coexist in the same place. So for example, the Virginia's warbler and the orange-crowned warbler, they go to the same places, although the orange-crowned gets there sooner, but they use different areas. The orange-crowned warbler is dominant. It takes the better spots. The Virginia's warbler had to change its niche. Otherwise, it wouldn't be able to coexist. It would go extinct in the areas that the orange-crowned is. By the way, you don't really see an orange-crowned on those generally, but that's their name sometimes. Okay, in mutualism, they both benefit. So here we've got a hermit crab with an anemone on top. The anemone is sessile, it doesn't move. So by being on the hermit crab, they both benefit because it protects the hermit crab and it's able to move and get any pieces of food the hermit crab misses and the anemone takes. Here we've got a shark with a cleaner wrasse. These cleaner wrasses come by, eat anything off the shark, and keep the shark healthy so it doesn't have parasites. What's really neat is there's another species called blennies that look a lot like cleaner wrasses. And how the cleaner wrasse gets in there without getting eaten is it does this little dance for the shark. And the shark's like, hey, I recognize that, come on in. Blennies can do that dance too. And what they do instead of cleaning the shark is they bite it. They take a bite and run. So they're parasitic. So that's pretty neat. In plant evolution, we talked about mycorrhizae, the mutualism between plant roots and fungi, where the fungi helps the plant absorb nutrients and water, and then the plant gives the fungi sugars, helps them survive better. We've got insects and flowers. Flowers provide nectar to the insects. In return, the insects pollinate for them. They spread their sperm pollen to other individuals so they can reproduce sexually. And the last one, these are oxpeckers, and they thought this was a mutualism where the oxpeckers, these birds, would come by. This is a kudu. This is a picture I took in South Africa. The horns are lovely. They thought that the oxpeckers ate insects and parasites just like the cleaner wrasses. But what they found was that although the kudu thinks that's what's happening, is they have more likely, they take this scabs and eat them. And so animals that have oxpeckers have more scabs and overall. So that's not actually mutualism, even though they think it is. And next, predation. The predator benefits, the prey is harmed. So cryptic coloration is one way to hide from predators. Can you see the crypsis occurring here? There's a cicada, and that's an octopus. You can see its eyes there on the bottom of the floor. It's blending in. And this is a fun one. If you want to, you can pause the video and look for the prey and predators. See if you can find them. This is a seahorse. There's a giraffe. There's a crocodile. So some predators are these sit and wait predators, where they don't have to have a lot of endurance. They have to have these fast spurts of energy where they sneak up and wait for their prey. And then there's a moth there. It's pointed out already. It looks like a leaf during the day. You can also have warning coloration. So these would be possible prey items that warn the predator. So like this is the blue-ringed octopus. Very small, very toxic. When approached by humans, their first instinct is to flee, but if you don't let them, what they do is these parts turn more brown and they bite you, and that affects your sodium channels. And what that means is that your muscles can't contract. You can't send electrical signals. So if your muscles can't contract, you can't breathe, and then your cardiac muscle cells can't contract, and you go into cardiac arrest and die within minutes. Their toxin, their venom is the same as pufferfish. It's tetrodotoxin. Pretty neat. Bright colored individuals indicate that they are toxic. And predators learn this. Like monarch butterflies, if a bird eats a monarch butterfly, it gets sick. And they learn very quickly not to eat monarch butterflies. So with that coloration, they don't have to hide because predators know not to eat them. You can also see mimicry occurring. So I told you that they won't eat the monarch. Mimicry is when an unharmful species looks like a harmful species. So if a bird learns not to eat monarchs and it sees a viceroy, it's not going to eat that either because it looks so similar. The problem occurs when you have a lot of viceroys and very few monarchs. Then they won't learn that lesson very quickly, if at all, and then the viceroys will still get eaten. So they need to keep their populations lower than the monarchs to be successful. So if they get too high, they'll go down. Here are two snakes. The red on black is the milk snake, whereas the yellow on red is the coral snake. Coral snakes, highly venomous. Milk snakes, fine, unharmful. But you can't really tell them apart by looking at them very well. There's the saying, red on black, you're okay, Jack. Red on yellow, you're a dead fellow. So they look alike. And these are caterpillars that are supposed to look like snakes. And here's another example of insect crypsis. There's a lot of insects that look like other things. So katydids will oftentimes look like leaves. This is a moth that looks like bird poop. That's pretty fun. Twigs, stick bugs, examples. Herbivory is basically a form of predation by herbivores, animals eating plants. Plants have actually evolved a lot of defenses against herbivory, including spine, thorns, and chemical toxins. So these are both South Africa pictures where they're in what's called acacia. You've got a lion and a bushbuck. That's a small antelope species. And they're both in this acacia genus plant that has really large, sharp thorns in it. The reason that it's there is because there's lots of elephants in this area, and they eat everything but acacia first. So you've got lots of these spiny things left there. Some chemical toxins that we quite enjoy: peppermints, cloves, cinnamon. All of those are to deter herbivory. Another positive negative is parasites and pathogens. So parasites are animals that live on or in a host. So the host, like we're the host for a hookworm. This snail is the host for a parasitic worm. I showed a video, a little bit of this snail, and showing how the parasite alters its behavior so that it goes up on a leaf so that a bird eats it. And then the bird poops out eggs, and the snail eats that, and it goes through a cycle. So you have the host, where it matures, and the vector, where it releases eggs, and you can go back and forth. Some are more complicated than others. Others are more straightforward. And pathogens, bacteria, viruses, fungus, protists can all cause us to have diseases from them. Bacterial infections, for example. Summary: effect on species 1, effect on species 2. In competition, nobody wins. In mutualism, everyone wins. Predation, herbivory, and parasites, one species benefits, the other is harmed. And remember, these all are considered symbiosis. Symbiosis does not necessarily mean positive. These are all interactions between two species. Just like that's what symbiosis is. Another concept I want to touch on is biological magnification. Each level that you go up the food chain, you'll see any sort of toxins accumulate at higher levels. And the reason that is first level takes in some of the toxins, so like DDT, the pesticide, and then the next level takes in a lot of insects. And so they have more toxins in their system. And then the next level you go up, you get that magnification again and again. So that's why when we eat some fish, they have lots of mercury because they're higher on that chain. So when you eat a predatory fish, there's more than a lower level fish, for example. Here's another example. PCB, polychlorinated biphenyls, are produced, basically it's chlorines with these phenyl, these ring carbon structures put together from coolants. So like if a factory has a coolant, you can get it from there. And then if that gets improperly disposed of, it can go into the ecosystem. And each level you go up, you'll see higher ppm's, parts per million. So if you looked at like a million atoms, 124 would be in the herring and would be that PCB. Species diversity. There's two ways to measure species diversity. How many species make up the community and how relatively abundant they are. So species richness, how many species there are, and relative abundance, how proportionally are they represented. So is there 5 of each species, or is there 20 of one species and 1 of each of the other species? So here's woodland A and woodland B. They both have the same number of species, 1, 2, 3, 4. But woodland B has more equal proportions of each. So they both have the same species richness, but woodland A has a higher relative abundance of one species than the others, whereas woodland B, they're equal. In the next video, I'll start discussing keystone species.